All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Sorry for being a few minutes late. It is a Friday, so hopefully you all are enjoying your Friday, and we appreciate you being here with us today to learn about this important topic and for the final installment in our Snapped Up series, which has been truly one of my favorite, not only for the subject matter, but also because of our wonderful speakers that have powered through all of these sessions with us. So with that being said, welcome to Snapped Up Part 4, Calculating SNAP Benefits. This was approved for CLE credit, one general credit, and one technology credit. So at the end, I will announce that CLE code and I will put it into the chat. And always remember, you will get that CLE code in an email from Zoom 24 hours after this event, along with the recording and any materials that our speakers have provided us with. Speaking of materials, and I do need to make sure that you all have the chat function enabled. Give me a quick second. Okay, it looks like it is. In the chat right now, you all should see a few things that I dropped in. I dropped in some hypotheticals, 2 worksheets, and an appendix. This was also emailed to everyone who registered, as long as you registered before, I would say 9 o'clock this morning. So this is also in your inbox. The reason that we've included these materials into the chat is because we're going to be going through these hypotheticals with a live demonstration of the budget worksheet, which you'll learn more about throughout the session. And it might be easier for you to pull up the hypothetical on your screen. That way you can follow along with the worksheet as we go along, or vice versa. So please let me know if you have any trouble accessing those materials, and I will get them over to you. A couple of other housekeeping announcements. This is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be sent out within 24 hours. And questions and answers, please drop them into the chat or the Q&A. I'll be screen sharing most of the time today, so I won't be able to monitor the questions and answers as they come in, but we will certainly make time to answer any questions you might have at the end. So please don't be shy. Please let us know what you're thinking and what your questions are. So without further ado, I'll move into the introductions of our speakers. It makes me very sad that this is the last time I'm going to be doing this as part of this series, and I hope I get to do it again in another one. But we have Valerie Greenfield, she's staff attorney at Bay Area Legal Services. Valerie obtained her bachelor's degree with high honors from the University of Florida, where she majored in sociology. She received her law degree from the University of Miami School of Law and is a member of the Florida Bar. Before joining the Florida Senior Legal Helpline at Bay Area Legal, in 2015, Valerie was a staff attorney and later department head in the Public Benefits Unit at Legal Services of Greater Miami for 11 years. Thereafter, she served for 19 years as senior staff attorney at Florida Legal Services, providing training, consultation, and litigation support to statewide advocates in public benefits. We also have with us Cindy Huddleston, who is the Senior Policy Analyst and Attorney at Florida Policy Institute. Cindy received her BA from the University of Tennessee and her JD from Case Western Reserve University. Cindy is an attorney with over 35 years of experience advocating to strengthen public assistance programs for low-income Floridians. Before joining Florida Policy Institute, Cindy worked at Florida Legal Services and Legal Services of Greater Miami, where she represented indigent clients to maximize access to programs that provide work supports, such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Reemployment Assistance, and Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. Cindy focuses on safety net programs for low-income Floridians and has extensive experience as an advocate and lobbyist for policies that promote financial security for all Floridians. So with that, I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint and I'm going to turn it over to Val and Cindy. Thank you both so much for being here with us today and teaching us today. Of course, technical issues. Give me 1 second. I got signed out of my account. I apologize. Of course that would happen, right? Okay, I'm signed in. All right, and we're ready to go.
Well, thank you, Alexis. Valerie and I really do appreciate everyone being on this webinar. And before I get to really why we're here, I want to give a little background about the SNAP program. Alexis, in the interest of time, can you just forward it to slide 8 and get right into an overview about why SNAP matters? I know that I'm probably just preaching to the choir here, but why do we care about the SNAP program? Why do we care about how benefits are calculated? You know, why is SNAP important not just to Floridians, but also to the state of Florida? SNAP helps households with low income in so many ways. It obviously prevents hunger, and it helps families purchase much healthier foods than they would be able to on their own income. Kids do better in school when they get SNAP. And SNAP is associated with improved short and long-term health, and it helps to reduce healthcare costs. Next slide, please. And just to give you an idea of who's served in the program in Florida, families with children make up about 35% of SNAP households in the Sunshine State. 40% of households have a member who is a senior. Over 300,000 SNAP participants have a disability, including 62,000 children. 80% of households have at least one member who worked in the past year. So SNAP is a real benefit to low-wage workers. Over 107,000 veterans participate in SNAP, and over 20% are non-seniors with disabilities. But SNAP is also an important safety net for all Floridians, not just for households who have children or for households with seniors or persons with disabilities, you know, but also for other Floridians who are often ineligible for other safety net programs like TANF or Medicaid because they don't have a child or they don't have a disability or they aren't a senior. You know, and finally, one more thing to point out about this, another good reason to love SNAP is that the federal government pays 100% of the cost of the SNAP benefits that Florida provides to eligible households, although the state does share in administrative costs. So the cost of SNAP benefits that folks get are actually paid for by the federal government. Next slide, please. Many SNAP participants are extremely poor. Many live on fixed incomes, and they don't have the financial means to afford medical, housing, and food in many cases. SNAP provides those households, you know, a modest benefit of about $162 a month per household member on average. Of course, is that enough to put food on the table all month? No. So making sure that household benefits are calculated correctly is extremely important. The more benefits, the better able participants are to shift the resources that they otherwise would have spent on food towards other immediate needs, you know, like housing. Next slide, please. And it isn't just individual Floridians who benefit. Our economy does too. Using SNAP creates what economists call a multiplier effect by generating income, you know, for everyone who's involved with you know, food production, distribution, marketing, sales. And in fact, USDA says that for every dollar in SNAP benefits, up to $2 of economic activity is generated. So with that, let me turn this over again to Val, who will get into the nitty gritty, you know, about the topic you're all here to learn about, which is calculating SNAP allotments. Val?
Thank you. Next slide. So as Cindy mentioned, I'm going to start talking to you about The topic of today, calculating SNAP allotments. Generally speaking, people's food stamp benefit amounts are based on their income as compared to their expenses. Although it is a little bit more complicated than that, because what's used to actually come up with the amount is a federal formula. And that federal formula takes into account certain presumptions that people are supposed to be spending certain portions of their income on particular expenses. And the formula also has built into it certain allowances, credits, deductions for some of those expenses, if you will. Next slide. But the Department of Children and Families Food Assistance Budget Worksheet makes that math a lot easier. This is form CF-ES3002. And in fact, if you plug CFES3002 into your search engine, you will come up with the very form that we're going to be using later today. You can also use the link that's at the bottom of this particular slide. This form is an interactive form that's used by the Department of Children and Families, and now all of us, to electronically calculate both eligibility for SNAP and the amount of SNAP benefits a particular assistance group will get. It does require that anyone using the form have access to current information about the particular household applicant situation, as well as information that's published about SNAP eligibility limits and deductions. This is not an application for SNAP. This is a worksheet that helps us figure out the amounts. Next slide. Here's an example of what it looks like. This is a snapshot, a PDF of a food stamp worksheet that we used in a prior training. It shows you how we filled in certain numbers and came up with certain calculations. And I don't think it shows too well on your screen, but certain of the numbers are dark and certain of the numbers are a little bit lighter in color. The lighter colored numbers, the lighter gray, those are numbers that you actually end up filling in manually yourself. But all the dark numbers are filled in by the worksheet itself. Those are automatically populated as you do the worksheet. Next slide. So you saw a bunch of lines on that slide, and those are what we call the line item entries. And that's the information you're going to need to know about the household and also from published sources in order to use this worksheet. So let me break down some of that information. First pieces of information you're going to need to know about your household that you are assisting is whether anybody in the house is age 60 or older or is getting a disability benefit. And that's because there are special rules for people in those categories. We've talked about some of those special rules in prior trainings. And so I refer you to some of those trainings, the first one we did and the last one we did last month. Also, you're going to need to know about the number of people in the assistance group who are applying together for food stamps. And again, in our last training, we spent a considerable amount of time talking about how to configure the particular assistance group that applies to maximize benefits. So if you need a refresher course or you missed that one, take a look at that. And if you need a refresher or a reminder, or you missed the first one, which talks about all this terminology we're going to use, take a look at that one too. Next slide. Additional information you're going to need about your assistance group, their income, how much it is, and whether it's earned or unearned. And then you're also going to need to know if they have unreimbursed out-of-pocket medical expenses, because this is a special benefit to seniors and people with disabilities. The amount that's over $35 can be deducted as you do this worksheet. We talked about that a lot in the last training, and I want to remind you that Florida Policy Institute has a medical expense deductions toolkit on their website that can be particularly helpful in calculating the medical expense. Next slide. You also will need to know if anybody in that household is paying for dependent care that they need in order to go to work or training. Also, find out if anyone in the household is paying out child support to someone who's not in the household, because those two categories of expenses can be deducted on this food stamp budget worksheet for appropriate households. Next slide. You will also need to know whether the household pays rent or mortgage and what is the amount of that rent or mortgage. Find out if they are a mortgage holder, if they are a homeowner, if they are paying property insurance or real estate taxes, or perhaps a homeowner, home ownership association fees. So even if they don't have a mortgage, those figures will be important. If they don't have a home, find out whether they have any kinds of costs as a homeless individual, homeless as defined by the Department of Children and Families. And those costs for homeless households might be paying for a hotel room or the cost of staying in a car. Next slide. You'll also need to know if this household pays for utilities. Now, the formula, the Department of Children and Families publishes two allowances for utilities. One is called the standard utility allowance, one is called the basic utility allowance. You need to find out from your household, do they have a heating or cooling expense? If they have either one of those, they'll get the standard utility allowance, which is higher. If they don't have a heating or cooling expense, but they have at least two other utility expenses, they can get the basic utility allowance, which is a little bit lower. If they don't fit into either of those categories and they have a cost for a phone, they can at least get the phone standard. Now, a word about utilities. You don't get to take the actual amount of your utilities. If you have heating or cooling, you get the standard utility allowance, and that incorporates everything, phone and every other utility you might have. Same with basic utility allowance. It incorporates all that you're going to get if you don't have a heating or cooling and have at least two other utility expenses. Next slide. So you found out all that information about your household. What else do you need in order to use this worksheet? You're going to need to look at one of the publications that Alexis sent out and has posted in the chat, and that's the Food Assistance Income Eligibility Standards and Deductions Chart. I know that sounds like a mouthful. This is Appendix A1 to the department's online program policy manual. And that gets updated every year, and the new one just came out with values that take effect October 1, 2022, next month. This chart, if you will, publishes the allowances that I've talked about that are incorporated within the formula. So there are standards for the utility, there's standards for the phone, there's a standard deduction for homeless folks, and then there is a shelter deduction, the excess shelter deduction being $624, which is capped. So, except if you are a senior or have a disability. So remember, I was talking at the beginning about presumptions that are built into the formula. So for one of those presumptions is the shelter, that you will spend at least 50% of your income on shelter. But if you spend more than that, then you get an allowance for having excessive shelter. That is capped at $624 unless you are a senior or have a disability. And that figure changes annually. It's on the chart that is found at Appendix A1. Next slide. Also on that chart, super important, is the maximum allotment levels per household size and the minimum allotment of $23 for an assistance group of 1 or 2. That minimum allotment 23 changes to that as of October 1. And also listed on the chart are the standard deductions. Everyone gets a standard deduction depending on their household size. Next slide. 2 important rules to remember as we go forward and do this budget worksheet. Most SNAP households must meet both a gross and net income limit to be eligible for SNAP. Those net limits, gross, net, and net limits are listed on Appendix A1. But seniors and people with disabilities only have to meet the net income test. You will find out, as Cindy explains categorical eligibility, that the categorically eligible folks don't have to meet any of these tests, but most SNAP households will be subject to either the gross and net, or if a senior or a person with a disability, just the net. The other important rule to remember is the minimum allotment, which changes to 23 effective next month. Eligible households who meet that net income test that I discussed just a moment ago, where there is at least only one or two members in that household, qualify for a minimum benefit of at least $23. So even after all the calculations are said and done, if the calculations show that the person only qualifies for $1 or $10 or $19 in food stamps, if they meet the net income test, which they have to, and they are a household of one or two members, they will at least get $23. This is to ensure that households who meet that test get at least 8% of the maximum allotment for a household of one. I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy so you can move to the next slide.
So Valerie mentioned these other concepts that come into play when determining whether someone is eligible for SNAP and how much they're eligible for. And those two concepts that we're going to talk about today are called categorical eligibility and broad-based categorical eligibility. Next slide, please. So first, what is categorical eligibility? Categorical eligibility eliminates the requirement that households who have already met the financial eligibility rules for TANF or SSI or refugee assistance. It eliminates the requirement that those households go through yet another financial eligibility determination to get SNAP. In its traditional form, categorical eligibility grants SNAP eligibility based on a household's already getting cash assistance from SSI or refugee assistance or TANF. These households have, already gone through eligibility determinations for those programs, so they are allowed to bypass the initial income and resource test for SNAP and are deemed financially eligible. Categorically eligible households do not have a gross income test, a net income test, or an asset or resource test. But that's not to say that they will actually get SNAP benefits. Their SNAP benefit amount will be based on SNAP allotment levels, which vary by household size, and the household's countable net income after deductions for certain expenses. Some will qualify for a SNAP allotment, but some will not, depending on what the SNAP allotment is for a household of their size and their countable net income. So the bottom line is, while the household may be categorically eligible because they're getting TANF or SNAP or TANF or SSI or refugee assistance, while they may be categorically eligible, its net countable income may be too high to actually receive a monthly SNAP benefit. And so remember that just because a household is categorically eligible does not mean that they will actually get SNAP. Now, just to complicate things even more, as Valerie mentioned, there is one exception. The exception is that all eligible households consisting of one or two persons with income under the net income limit, which by the way is 100% of poverty, those households are eligible for at least what is called the SNAP minimum monthly allotment. And as Val said, that's set at $23 come October 1st of this year. Next slide, please. Why does the law allow for categorical eligibility? Categorical eligibility simplifies applying for households who are most in need. And it also simplifies the administration of the program for DCF because they don't have to go back and calculate all the income and asset limitations for each household and compare them to the standards for the SNAP program. It reduces the potential for state errors in establishing eligibility for benefits because DCF doesn't have to do any of this. If you get TANF or SSI or refugee assistance, you are considered categorically eligible. Next slide, please. But since 1996, states have been able to expand categorical eligibility beyond kind of its traditional bounds with what is called broad-based categorical eligibility. In the SNAP program, as most people know, it generally operates under a nationwide consistent set of federal eligibility rules. But broad-based categorical eligibility is a policy area that does result in differences in income and eligibility rules across states. And as a result of this policy, as a result of broad-based categorical eligibility, more than 40 states use much less restrictive income and asset or resource tests in SNAP than is set out in federal law. Under regular federal rules, not broad-based categorical eligibility rules, but regular rules, SNAP households, except for households with a person who is a senior or has a disability, most households have to have gross income below 130% of the federal poverty level for regular SNAP, even if they have deductions that would increase their need for help and reduce, their net income to SNAP qualifying levels. And under the regular asset rules, not the broad-based categorical rules, but the regular asset rules, households have an asset limit of $2,750 or $4,250 if the household contains a senior or a person with a disability. But under broad-based categorical eligibility, SNAP allows states to waive the asset limit and increase the gross income threshold to greater than 130% of poverty, just by providing applicants with a benefit funded by TANF. This is often done through a notice about broad-based categorical eligibility, and it helps states simplify SNAP eligibility for everyone. States who choose to have broad-based categorical eligibility in their SNAP program have generally chosen 165%, 185%, or 200% of the federal poverty level as the gross income test, and have also waived the asset limit. Next slide, please. And believe it or not, Florida has opted into broad-based categorical eligibility to the maximum extent possible. Florida waives the asset limit for most households and uses a gross income test of 200% of poverty. Next slide, please. So how do families in Florida get to be broad-based categorically eligible? In Florida, broad-based categorically eligible households get that status because DCF sends them information about TANF in an Access Florida notice. They don't have to be eligible for TANF. They don't have to apply for TANF. They just get this notice about TANF when they apply for SNAP. And that makes them broad-based categorically eligible as long as their income is under 200% of poverty. Next slide, please. What does this look like in real numbers? Who benefits? Well, as you can see from this slide, there really is a significant difference in the income limits for SNAP applicants if you use 200% of poverty as opposed to 130% of poverty. And Florida uses the 200% of poverty for broad-based categorical eligibility instead of 130%. Next slide. And getting rid of the SNAP asset or resource test is extremely helpful to families. SNAP asset limits, which are very low, don't let families have enough money in savings to eke out a better life, for themselves, much less for their children. The ability to, save for the future is really important to the fiscal survival of many families. Parents need the ability to put away enough cash to afford basic necessities like, school clothes for their children who've outgrown last year's outfits, and to get school supplies, not to mention to save for college for children. Families really need savings to weather the additional expense of an unexpected illness. If an appliance like a refrigerator breaks down, or they have to, replace the spark plugs in their car. But with an asset limit, families who rely on SNAP lose their ability to save enough to take care of emergencies, much less to provide for the future of their children. So not having an asset limit is a huge benefit to families. Next slide, please. Without broad-based categorical eligibility in Florida, analysis show that the working poor would likely fall over the benefit cliff way sooner than they do now. Although everyone, of course, wants a raise at work, sometimes even a small increase in earning can raise a family's income above the 130% gross income test and cause the family to be ineligible for SNAP. And of course, when that happens, the family loses their SNAP, they fall off the cliff, even though in many cases, the paycheck that a household member gets does not make up for the SNAP benefits they lose. So it's really, really very helpful that the gross income test has been increased all the way to 200% of poverty in Florida. Plus, broad-based categorical eligibility allows more children to qualify for free meals at school. Kids getting SNAP qualify for free school meals without applying. And since more kids qualify for SNAP under broad-based categorical eligibility, more kids get that free meal. Next slide, please. Without broad-based categorical eligibility, a study in Florida, which is now several years old and likely undercounts folks, shows that the largest group of recipients affected in Florida would be children if we didn't have broad-based categorical eligibility. More than 8.5% of all children getting SNAP would lose their eligibility. And of course, as I noted before, they're also going to lose their automatic eligibility for free school meals. Over 5% of seniors and persons with disabilities would also lose eligibility. And of course, DCF would be burdened with the additional red tape verifying assets. So it's to everyone's benefit to have broad-based categorical eligibility in place in Florida. Next slide, please. So, I guess a big question is then everyone who gets that notice about TANF when they apply for SNAP considered broad-based categorically eligible in Florida if they have income under 200% of the federal poverty level? And the answer is no. Households with a member who is disqualified for fraud, a fleeing felon, convicted of felony drug trafficking, or under an employment and training sanction are not considered broad-based categorically eligible in Florida. And that affects the entire household. Next slide, please. Before I hand this over to Val, though, let me say that remember that while a household in Florida may be broad-based categorically eligible, the household must still qualify in order to receive a SNAP allotment. Their net income must still be determined as within the net income limit. And that net income has to be compared to the actual allotment level for a household of their size. A household may not be eligible for benefits based on the SNAP allotment table. And one last thing, because there was some controversy a couple of years ago when the prior administration moved to abolish broad-based categorical eligibility. On the federal level, some politicians called it a loophole. And the thing to keep in mind and to know is that broad-based categorical eligibility is not a loophole, it's in the law. And we're fortunate that here in Florida, DCF has chosen to use it. Analysis show that broad-based categorical eligibility does not cause substantial SNAP benefits to go to families who don't need it. And this is because households really can only qualify for any sizable amount of SNAP benefits if they have high expenses that leave them with little or no income available for food. With broad-based categorical eligibility, the SNAP applicants have a better chance of getting food assistance, but it's hardly an automatic pathway, and there's still a rigorous process to access benefits. Eligible households under broad-based categorical eligibility still have to verify their income. They have to go through interviews and comply with all those mandatory policies in the SNAP program, like, for example, time limits, work requirements, and cooperation with child support. So now, Val, let me give this back to you to work through the food assistance budget worksheet. And then she's going to show you how, kind of in real time, how DCF calculates benefits and how you can too.
Thank you, Cindy. Next slide. Let's look at our first hypothetical. Now, these are in the chat. They're accessible in the chat if you want to print it out and follow along, or perhaps you already did that because Alexa sent it out this morning. But let's just take a look at our first food stamp applicant. Ms. Ima Senior is a 70-year-old woman who lives alone and pays $800 to rent a studio apartment without heat or air conditioning. She does pay for water and electric. Now, Cindy, we talked a little bit earlier about the basic utility allowance versus the standard utility allowance. Which one is Ms. Senior going to get? She does not have heat or AC, but she does pay for 2 other utilities.
So if she doesn't have heating or cooling costs, she is going to be limited to, at most, the basic utility allowance.
Okay, great. So keep that in mind. We're going to get that information from the chart when it's time to fill in the worksheet. Let's go on. Her next paragraph. Her only income is Social Security retirement of $1,650 gross monthly, and she has savings of $1,000. Now, she's not getting a disability benefit. This is a retirement benefit. But is she going to be subject, Cindy, to any of the special rules for people who don't have to meet the gross income limit?
Yes, because she is a senior, she will not have to meet the gross income limit.
She's over 60, so that's right. So just to remind folks, and we'll see it when we go through the worksheet, if your income is under 200% of the gross income limit, which Cindy just mentioned is the broad-based categorical eligibility, you don't have an asset test. Now, Ms. Senior only has assets of $1,000. The new asset test for a person in her category, that is a senior, is $4,250. So she's well under, even if she had to meet an asset test, which we will soon see she does not. And then finally, we found out she has a bunch of medical expenses. She pays for Medicare Part B and D, eyeglasses, prescription medications, supplements for her doctors, a supplement that her doctor authorized, transportation to health providers, visits to doctors, dentists, and optometrists. Cindy, are those the kind of medical expenses, out-of-pocket medical expenses that would be deductible?
Absolutely. And medical expenses, deductions for medical expenses are quite underused nationwide, and particularly here in Florida, and they can serve to really increase the food allotment that you get in SNAP. So we urge you to, to maximize those deductions as best you can.
And according to this factual hypothetical, it turned out that when you subtract the medical standard of 35, she still had medical expenses a month of 500. So that just shows you that pays to ask about. So let's go to the budget worksheet and try to work through Ms. Senior's food stamps. So that's going to take us just a bit. to pull up that budget worksheet, and Cindy's going to help us with it. I'm going to talk, and you all have a printout of that worksheet. It's also in the chat if you want to print that out and follow along with us. So at the top left, you can put her name if you want at number 1. And Alexis, so you'll turn over the mouse to Cindy so she can stick that in there, just so we can distinguish her from anyone else. We can write
And
in
her name, her full name is what?
I'm a senior, but you can just put I'm a in there. There you go, senior. All right, you got the whole thing there. And then you can do the month over on the far right. We're going to work for using October's values. We're going to get ready for October 2022. So you can see at box 2 and 3, you got to fill in her income. She does not have earned income. She has unearned income at 3A of 1,650. That's her retirement. Cindy's going to put that number in. And as soon as she does, look at all the places where it jumps in automatically. Isn't that beautiful? So we're going to go to number 4, the box. This is the box where you have to see if somebody meets the gross income test. Now, she doesn't have to, because as we said, she's a senior, but let's just figure out if she would have met it. The gross income standard for a household of 1 is 2,266. So Cindy's going to put that in there, 2266. You compare her 1650 to 2266, and you see it's under household size of 1. And so she passes, and you can give yourself a good old pass on that one. Cindy can mark a check mark and pass. So even if she had to meet it, she would, but she doesn't have to because she's a senior. All right, let's go down. We've got box 5D. It's automatically put in her income, but we need to put in the standard deduction. Where do we get that information of 193 at 5F? We get it from that chart we were talking about, Appendix A1. When you put in that standard deduction for household size of 1, you see that this form automatically does the math for you. And so we're going to go down now to, we see we need a number at 7A that's going to be relevant to Miss Senior. So let's go over to box 6 and figure that out. We're going to put in 535 because that was the total of her expenses. But then at 6B, we have to manually subtract $35 because only the expenses over 35 count. So now the form automatically calculated at 6C that her excess medical is 500, and it moved that number automatically over to 7A and subtracted it. And now we see that her adjusted net income is 957 at 7F. Let's take a look at box 8. The food stamp program presumes, I talked about the presumptions earlier, that you're going to spend about half your income on shelter. So they said at box 8, they've calculated automatically that she's supposed to spend $478.50. Let's see if she does. At 9A, Cindy's going to put in $800 because that's her rent. And at 9C, she's going to put in the basic utility allowance of $303. We get that number from Appendix A1. That's the chart. We know that she only gets $303 because she doesn't have heating or cooling, although she does have 2 other utility expenses. So the form itself went ahead and calculated. It took her shelter standard from box 8 and put it in automatically at 9F. And it came up with the math to get her excess shelter deduction at 9G of 624.50. And then it automatically moved that number over to 10B and called that her excess shelter deduction, gave her credit for that, bringing her food stamp adjusted net income down to 332.50. A word about 9G, that excess shelter deduction. For October 2022 and forward, for 12 months, the next year coming, that is capped at 624. So Cindy, how come we got to deduct the entire 624.50 cents for this particular 70-year-old woman?
Well, fortunately, if you're a person who has a disability or you're a senior, You get to deduct your entire excess shelter deduction and you're not capped at $624.
Okay, so let me point out one defect with this form that you all need to be aware of as you move through other cases. This form doesn't limit the shelter deduction at 9G. Whatever the shelter deduction comes out to be, it's going to move that excess number, that 9G excess shelter deduction, over to 10B. If you're dealing with a household that is not a senior, doesn't contain a senior, doesn't contain a person with a disability, it is going to be capped at 624. So you need to be aware that your math could be thrown off at this point, and just keep that in mind. But for this particular senior, this form works great, and it has moved the number from 10C into the box at 11. And it tells us that her net income, food assistance adjusted net income, is 332.50, but she has to meet, even though she doesn't have to meet a gross test, she has to meet the net test. That number, the net income standard for a household of one, is 1,133. Cindy's going to plug that number into us for a household size of 1. And that number comes from Appendix A1. Now you have to compare it. Use your brain and see that that number 332 is less than 1,133. So she gets a good old pass on that. We move down to 12 because she has met this and can go forward. And we run into another presumption at 12A. The food stamp program presumes you're going to spend 30% of your own money, that is your adjusted net income, on food. So it reduces your benefit by that amount. It has automatically calculated this lady's benefit reduction at 12B at 100. Cindy's going to have to manually put that benefit reduction number at 13B. She's going to have to enter 100 at 13B. And then she's going to have to additionally consult the chart, 100 there, good. And then consult the chart for 13A. The maximum allotment for a household size of 1 is 281. So Cindy's going to put a 281 at 13A. And when she does that, it calculates this lady's monthly allotment at 181, which is a pretty hefty amount of food stamps. And that's what this lady would get. So Alexis, if you could take us back to the PowerPoint, we're going to take a look at the next hypothetical at slide 36. And then we're going to talk about Mr. Sherman Shepherd, and you got his hypothetical also. It's in the chat, but you got it in advance. And next slide. Mr. Shepherd is a 50-year-old man with sensory impairments who lives in his own home. He has heating and cooling in this home and a mortgage of $1,500 and real estate taxes and homeowner insurance expenses of $300. Cindy, this guy has heating and cooling, unlike our prior client. Which utility allowance does he get? Standard utility allowance, which is higher, or basic utility allowance?
He gets the standard utility allowance because he has heating or cooling costs, in his case, both. So he would be eligible for the standard utility allowance.
Okay, and now he has shelter costs of $1,500 for a mortgage, and then additionally, because he's a homeowner, he pays real estate taxes and homeowner insurance of $300. Are those both deductible shelter expenses?
Absolutely. Homeowners get to deduct taxes and their homeowner insurance expenses.
And then if he had a homeowner association and had fees, he'd get to deduct that as well, right?
Right.
Okay. Second paragraph on him, he recently became eligible for Social Security disability benefits of $2,500 and has savings of $4,250. Now, the key there is that he's not retired, but he has a disability benefit. He's not a senior because he's only 50. But Cindy, does Social Security disability insurance qualify in the food stamp program to get him into any kind of special rules for people with disabilities?
Yes, that makes him considered to be a person who has a disability for SNAP purposes.
Okay, and I'm particularly noticing that number of his savings is $4,250. What is the significance of that particular number?
Well, interestingly, In the SNAP program, most people don't have a resource or asset test, but for those who do, if you're a senior or person with a disability, the asset test is 4250, so he would beat that.
Oh, okay, good. So we'll figure out whether he has to meet that asset test or not when we get to the worksheet. Now, third paragraph, he has a specially trained service animal. That dog has a skin condition and is very expensive dog food that costs $200 a month. Cindy, is that a medical expense that could be deducted?
Yes, because Zen is a specially trained service animal and he has a disability, he'll be able to deduct all his service animal related costs, including dog food.
Okay. All right, let's move back to that worksheet and let's talk about Mr. Shepherd. Let's try to figure that one out. Okay, we're gonna hit the clear button at the top. And it goes back to blank. And Cindy's gonna put Shepherd, Mr. Shepherd's name in there, Sherman Shepherd at number 1. And over on the far right, she's gonna stick October again. This gentleman has gross unearned income of $2,500 in disability benefits. 2,500. He does not have any earned income. It put that number into box 4, and now we have to compare it to the gross income standard. Again, from the chart, that gross income standard is 2,266. 2266. There we go. Well, he's over, but as a person with a disability, he does not have to meet this gross income test. So you don't have to, you can mark the pass because for him, he passes. He doesn't even need to meet this test. We just wanted to show you how it operates there. All right, we're going to look at number 5. We see that the forms automatically put his income in at 5D and E. We have to put the manually insert the standard deduction of 193 at 5F. We're going to do that, and the form does the calculations for us. Now we're going to go over and use box 6 for the medical expenses. The dog's dog food is 200. Cindy told us that's deductible as a medical expense because this is a service animal, specially trained. So it tells us that we have to put the 35 in there at 6B. You have to subtract that because you only get the cost over 35. So the form calculated that he gets 165 in excess medical, and it's moved that number over to 7A and done the appropriate calculations. We go down to box 8. Again, the form has automatically said, well, he should be spending half of his income on shelter. Let's see if he spends more. So his mortgage, based on our facts, is 1,500. Cindy's going to put the mortgage of 1,500 at A. It's 9A. And at 9B, we're going to put 300 because he had real estate and taxes expenses there. And because he has heating and cooling, or heating and or cooling, he gets the standard utility allowance. And the chart tells us that that is 376. So Cindy's going to put 376 in there. So it calculates his excess shelter deduction at a whopping 1,105. He is not going to be capped because he is a person with a disability. He's going to get to take that entire shelter deduction, and the number is in fact moved over to 10B, bringing his food stamp adjusted income to 1,037. Now we got to look at box 11. We have got to see if he meets the net income test because he's going to have to meet it. As a person whose income, by the way, was over 200% of poverty, let's just scroll back up a second to box number 4. Remember, he was over 200% of poverty, was 2266. He does not qualify for broad-based categorical, so he has an asset test. So that 4750 is critical. He meets the asset test. Let's scroll back down to box 11, and he does, even though he's not broad-based categorical eligibility, he still gets to have his food stamp calculated because he doesn't have to meet that gross income test. He had to meet an asset test, but not a gross income test as a person with a disability. That net income standard that goes in that box right there from the chart is 1,133. He has to meet that.
I'm sorry, Val, what did you say it was again?
1,133, 1133 for a household size of 1. And does he meet it? Well, because of all of his deductions, especially that excess shelter deduction, his food stamp adjusted income is below the net income standard, so he passes. Again, the presumption that he's going to spend 30% of his own income on food is found at 12B. He has a benefit reduction of 312. Cindy's going to put that number at 13B. We have to put that number at 13B, 312. And we have to figure out the maximum allotment, 13A. Well, for a household of 1, it's 281. So Cindy's going to put at 13A, 281. So what does this form do? It now calculates his monthly allotment, and it's telling you it's 0. But that is wrong, because we know that there's a special rule for people who meet the net income test at box 11 and who are a household of 1 or 2. They're going to at least get the minimum allotment, which we know from Appendix A1 is $23. So just, Cindy, go down to reason for worksheet, down there at the bottom, underneath all these calculations, and type in 23, just to remind us that he's going to get that minimum allotment. Okay, so that's the worksheet for this guy. Let's go back to that PowerPoint, because Cindy is going to tell you just a little bit more before we move to questions and answers. She's going to tell you about SNAP, which Florida Policy Institute has developed. It's a group of advocates. Let's move to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you, Val. And you know, as you said, before we sign off, I would love to extend an invitation to everyone here who's not already part of it to join the Safety Net Advocacy Coalition, which will provide members with up-to-date, information about safety net programs like SNAP and TANF, WIC, reemployment assistance, Medicaid, and also the opportunity to join in advocacy efforts if you choose, not a requirement. So if you're interested, please email me. And one last thing, even though today we have focused on DCF's form for calculating benefits, remember that Florida Policy Institute also has kind of a scaled down SNAP calculator on our website for determining possible eligibility and SNAP allotment amounts. I recommend that you look at both tools when you're figuring out eligibility. Florida Policy Institute's tool will not catch every possible scenario and give you the allotment for every possible scenario, but for most clients, it will. And it's a kind of a shortcut version of this one. All you need to know to fill that form out is just information about your client and their household circumstances. You don't have to manually input anything about minimum allotment. Those are built into the program. So please look at that too. And please, if you're interested, become a member of the SNAP Coalition. Thank you. And back to you now, Alexis.
Alexis, do we have any questions and answers? Let me just say a word before we go to any of those. That folks, go ahead and put those in the chat or the Q&A if you've got them. Cindy and I have been practicing in the area of food stamps since the dawn of time. And we want you to know that we have to look stuff up every time. So we've kind of quickly given you an overview and thrown a lot of terminology at you and thrown a lot of rules at you. Don't worry if you haven't committed all of this to memory. We haven't either. We are constantly looking stuff up in the program policy manual, and we're here as a resource for you. Should you have any questions, you can always contact us. So Alexis, did anybody send in any questions? I think we're, almost at time here, maybe a little bit
Yeah.
over, but we're happy to stay on and answer.
Thank you so much. You both are a wealth of knowledge, and this being like the last installment of this series, I know I, who have been at every one of them, have learned an extensive amount about this topic, and we thank you so much for sharing that information with us. I don't see any questions into the chat or the Q&A. I'm gonna pop the CLE code in for folks while I have it on my radar. The CLE code is 220728. N as in Nancy. And this was approved for 1 general and 1 technology CLE credit. If folks don't have any questions right now, as Cindy and Valerie said, they're willing to answer any questions you might have later down the line. I will be following up. I'm sorry. You will receive an email from Zoom in 24 hours with this recording, a copy of the PowerPoint, and the CLE code. That email will not come from my email address. It'll come from Zoom. But of course, if you don't receive it, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I do see one comment in the chat, Cindy and Val. It said, great presentation. I echo that as well. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to you for any final and closing remarks. I know you've spoken enough today, but anything else you'd like to add before signing off?
Well, I would like to,
yeah.
I was going to ditto, Val, what you said about the fact that we realize this is a lot of information to take in, and we just really want you to kind of maybe have something make you think, oh yeah, don't I need to look at whether, and the asset test applies because this person is a senior or someone with a disability. It's just kind of to get you started and to know the kind of things that you're going to have to keep in mind. And the first couple of times you do this, it may seem kind of onerous, but it does get much easier over time. And like Val said, we're here to help if we can. So please feel free to reach out.
Right. And, we didn't even deal with any households that have childcare expenses or pay out child support. That's a line item also on that form. It's on the left-hand side under the income. So that's a place where you would stick in that information if that applied to your household. Generally, we want to say that we're really pleased that so many people were able to come to all 4 parts of this SNAP presentation, all 4 installments, or even if you just made it for one, we're happy that you came. It's our mission to get more people into this food stamp program. Cindy explained all the reasons that SNAP is valuable to the economy as well as people. And we hope that all of you will be looking for your clients to be in the SNAP program.
And thank you, Alexis, and thank you, Florida Legal Services, for sponsoring this.
Absolutely.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. You two are such a pleasure to highlight and such a pleasure to learn from. And I've enjoyed working with you both on this, and I hope that we get the opportunity to work together soon on something else. So with all of that, folks are saying thank you so much for this valuable presentation. I've learned so much from this absolutely amazing series. Thank you so much. Great presentation. So ladies, your work is well received. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Friday, everyone. Keep your eyes peeled from the email from Zoom, and always reach out to me if you need anything additional. With that, signing off. Happy Friday. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and thank you again.
Thank you.